Hey, what's up, everybody?
Welcome back to Mile Higher Podcast, episode 249. And today we are coming to you with more philosophy thought experiments.
More than just that, though. Today we're going to be talking about not only thought experiments, which we did a previous episode on this. We have a little bit of that, but we're also just going to be talking about the whole concept of God, of heaven, the problem of evil, free will.
I didn't know we were doing that.
Some of my favorite topics.
Okay.
So it'll be really interesting because we've got some different dynamics here on the show and different backgrounds and things like that. So I'm really interested. I'm sure a lot of you probably have heard my views before, but I'm interested to hear some of you who didn't grow up religious and some of what your views on free will and the problem of evil and some of those things are.
Clearly, I have gone into this episode completely unprepared. Well, that was kind of the goal here, is to go into this with an open mind and really have a live reaction. We are actually pre-recording this episode because when you see it, we will be traveling somewhere filming a documentary.
We will be.
Yeah. But we still wanted to get content out to you guys. And we know you loved the philosophy experiments, thought experiments last time too. And we have, I don't know what this is. We have an activity here.
Oh boy.
We're going to find out because today we actually have our lovely researcher, Julia, who has her degree in philosophy, people. Here she is, the lovely lady herself. Yes. Welcome to the show, Julia. We're happy to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. It's like really weird being behind the camera now.
Usually she's sitting with us for recording, but she's just off in the sesh set. So now she's in front of the cam.
Yep. She's normally way in the back there in the dark, correcting us on our pronunciations of things. So
literally.
Yeah, but you've been working on the show for over a year now.
Yeah.
And definitely have helped us take things a mile higher, that's for sure, with our research skills and, making sure that we're presenting the best version of these different cases and stories that we cover here. And you've been a huge help to us. And today, again, with your philosophy background, it'd be great to have you. Cool.
Yeah, last time we recorded a philosophy episode, we kept having to stop recording so she could really explain things to us. And then I'd be like, okay, yeah. And then I would try and rephrase it. So this time around, we were like, okay, we should just have her sit with us and actually, hear it coming from her mouth because she knows it better, much better than I do, at least. So yeah, we're really excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you guys think and just kind of what you have to say and what you think about everything. So
yeah, me too. These are always really entertaining. Blow my mind.
I think we're going to get into some good discussion here today. But this episode of the podcast is brought to you by ritualandstamps.com. Well, let's just go ahead and dive right into things. First up, we have the prisoner's dilemma.
Oh, I remember this one. We almost did this last time. This one's interesting.
All right. So you and an accomplice robbed a bank and got arrested. You are both in solitary confinement with no way of communicating with each other. The prosecutor says they don't have enough evidence to convict both of you, so he makes an offer. Your accomplice is in another room, being offered the same deal. You have two options, remain silent or confess. If you confess and your accomplice stays silent, the prosecutor will free you and use your testimony to have your accomplice sent to jail for 10 years. If you stay silent, and your accomplice confesses, you will be sent to jail for 10 years and they will go free. If you both confess, you will both be sentenced to only 6 years. If you both stay silent, then the prosecutor won't be able to convict you both of robbery charges. You will both be convicted of firearm charges and only serve 1 year. So the prosecutor gives you the night to think about it, and you'll have to have your answer by the next morning. And when you're ready, you'll hand the jailer a note with your decision. Your accomplice will do the same at some point, but neither of you will know what the other has decided until the morning. And obviously assume that you don't really know your accomplice that well and you care a lot more about your own freedom than theirs.
So you haven't been robbing banks for
no, you're not
many
besties.
Years together.
No.
Okay.
I was going to say,
that
this
would
is
add
an
to
easy
it.
one. No snitching.
Yeah.
You're more than willing to throw them under the bus.
Okay, so one of them could be a rat and...
Did any of you ever see, I'm probably the only one who has seen this show because I used to watch the Game Show Network for fun as a kid, but Friend or Foe?
No.
It was kind of a similar concept where they would have two people go into a separate room and they would say whether they were a friend or a foe, and then you'd split money based on their answers. I don't know if any of you out there have seen it. It was a really good show, but
Never seen it.
Kind of reminds me of that. So basically, if you confess, both of you confess, you both get 6 years. If you don't confess, the other person does, they get 10 years, you get nothing. Vice versa, the other way around.
Yep.
And then if you both say nothing, you both get 1 year.
Exactly.
This is tough. This is very tough. And we're not concerned about the other person.
Nope. We only care about ourselves.
You're concerned
Okay.
in as much as like you're trying to maybe
Yeah.
you don't know them well enough to be like, oh, they're more likely to pick this option.
Right.
So that changes things though then, because then in your decision, you have to consider what the other person's going to do.
Right.
But you don't know, like, oh, well, Tom would never blah, blah, blah. I know him. You
Well,
really have
You
no
don't
idea.
know this person very well.
Exactly.
I would assume in this situation that the accomplice is going to do what's best for them, right? You have to assume that. Because in this type of situation, especially when you don't know each other well, everybody wants to get off with the crime, right? And assuming that they're presented with the same options, they're probably going to, it depends on how smart they are too, right? If they're smart, if both of you are smart and kind of like on the same wavelength, I would say don't say anything. Take the 1 year and just be done with it. And I mean, a firearms charge in 1 year.
But if you do that and the other person doesn't, then you get 10 and they get nothing.
Right. So it's a big gamble here.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer this.
Logical or rational, I would say, is to not say anything and assume the other person's going to say nothing as well.
Yeah.
But
that's the biggest gamble. If you don't say anything and they do, you could get 10 years. So it's either 0 or 10 years in that option. That's a big 50-50.
it is. But I think that's what I would do.
You wouldn't say anything?
I wouldn't say anything. I'm also thinking that if I do end up getting the 10 years, I don't want to be a snitch.
So if you don't confess, you'll either do 0 years or 1 year. So it's kind of the best option.
The prosecutor won't be able to convict us of those robbery charges. So then we'll just be convicted of the firearms charges.
Right.
But
I think your move would be to not confess.
I think there's a greater possibility of the other person making that same decision. Especially, I mean, this might be digging in too deep with it, but I'm assuming that by having an accomplice carry out a robbery with you, you know them to some extent. There's some prior,
but that's not in this situation. That's not part of this right now. You have to this is a random person. Might as well not know who they are. So if you confess, though, you pretty much are guaranteed 6 years or 10 years, correct?
If you confess,
there's no
the other accomplice confesses,
you both
get 6 years. But if you confess and the other person doesn't confess, the prosecutor will use your testimony to convict them, give them 10 years, and you'll go free.
Oh, right. Okay. So there is an option for 0 if you confess.
It's either you get 6 or 0 if you confess, or you get 10 or 1.
Right. Okay. I see.
So this is assuming you're going to make a selfish decision to try to get yourself off.
And you kind of got to assume they're going to do the same thing. I think that's the safest way to go, especially since we talked about last time how most people are inherently selfish.
Yeah. So I guess
I think your odds are with stay silent. Hope the other person does as well.
But you could also get totally screwed over by that decision too.
No, because you just serve 1 year.
But if your accomplice confesses, though, that's what I'm saying is like,
oh, right.
If your accomplice, so I think the correct answer here is to be selfish and try to get yourself off, and then
that's not funny.
Let fate.
12 years old here.
Hey, you know, and then I don't know. For me personally, though, I think I would just go not saying anything.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
I'd go against what this is trying to push me to do.
Yep, I would stay silent.
Is that both your final answers?
Yeah.
Stay silent?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Do you want to find out what
Ooh.
your accomplice picked?
Yes.
Okay. So both of you are going to reach into the little cauldron.
Oh, here comes the cauldron. Okay.
And you're just going to pull out one.
All right. Got it.
All right.
Ready?
Yep.
Damn, these are sealed indictments.
Yeah,
here.
they are.
Jesus.
Okay. My accomplice stayed silent.
Stayed silent.
Oh, you both got the stayed silent. So you got lucky.
Yeah.
We made it out.
It worked.
Or no, we didn't. We're going to jail for a year.
1 year. We both get 1 year.
It's not terrible.
No. I feel like that's a pretty good outcome considering.
Better than 10 or 6 years. So
yeah.
I would almost rather take the 1 year and not risk the 10 or 6, even if that meant potentially getting off. I think this was the best way to go.
I do too. What would you guys do? I'm curious.
Same.
You would stay silent too?
I think so, yeah.
I think it's kind of difficult because your instinct in this situation is kind of to protect yourself. And again, if you don't have any sort of feelings any which way about your accomplice, it's the thought like, I don't want to take that risk that I'm going to go to jail for 10 years. It's like really good option, really bad option.
Yeah.
I'm going to probably, I don't know, I might confess. And it's like, I could get 0 years, but I'll take the 6, you know?
Yeah.
But I feel like this isn't taking into account the criminal code of conduct.
No, it's not.
Which is like
no snitching.
Snitches get stitches, right? So you stay silent and you help each other out in the process. So I understand the philosophical question here, but I feel like because we're dealing with going to prison, that we're like using these biases that society gives us for that situation. And I'm infusing that knowledge into this decision. But if I didn't know any of that before, I think obviously you would go with the selfish answer of, I want to make sure I don't end up in prison. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to do that, even if that means throwing the other person under the bus, which people still do all the time. Like people, you know, rat on each other all the time in order to get lesser sentences. So it seems like most people would probably do what they needed to do to get off with the crime versus doing what we did. We did a very like, I don't know. I don't think this is like the typical answer, but
yeah. So this is actually a thought experiment in game theory. And kind of what it's trying to show is that the most rational decision based on probability would be to act selfishly and confess, like you said. And, you know, that's just based on the probability. But paradoxically, the prisoner's dilemma also shows that you would both do better if you both acted unselfishly and quote unquote like irrationally. And the best outcome comes from that cooperation. And there are some real life examples and applications of the prisoner's dilemma. Like if you take an arms race, for example, country A and country B are both trying to one-up each other on weapons. So country A is spending more. Country B then tries to catch up with them. And this just keeps going. And both countries get poorer, but neither of them really gains an advantage over each other.
Okay, I see.
And then there's also the 2 shopkeepers example. There's 2 shopkeepers selling the same product. They both try to lower their prices to poach the other shopkeepers' customers. But now they just keep lowering them. They are cutting into their profits, and neither of them benefits.
Interesting.
So it's kind of a race to the bottom. But if they both cooperated, they could raise their prices
together,
get more money.
Interesting. So cooperation is key, is the message here.
It doesn't. Well, I think sometimes we inherently associate cooperating with one another with somebody losing and somebody gaining over that other person. So this is showing us that perhaps if we work together on things, then there's a way for both of us to mutually benefit, like we just did with the prisoner's dilemma. We both mutually benefited from staying silent, as opposed to being selfish and wanting to completely get off of the crime. So I see the big dilemma here.
Yeah.
Is that we want to be selfish, but maybe we should not be selfish in order for the greater good, so to speak.
And to benefit ourselves in the end.
Yeah, well, in the end, everybody wins.
Right.
To some extent.
Yeah. That kind of can apply to so many situations in life if you really think about it.
Or even like alien civilizations. It would probably benefit extraterrestrial civilizations if they all collaborated. Imagine all the technology they could develop and, you know, imagine how they could connect the entire universe together with this technology, alerting everybody of each other's presence. But as far as we know, that hasn't happened. So it makes you wonder if these same dilemmas exists throughout all intelligent life of the universe. And that is why, well, it's kind of the Fermi paradox type of thing. You know, you look at that whole situation and why haven't we heard from anybody in our huge universe that we have? Why haven't we been contacted officially by extraterrestrials yet?
Oh, you're taking things a mile higher, for real.
Well, it's the same concept. Is like, are all intelligent beings who have a consciousness inherently selfish? Do they inherently only care about themselves? Or but it's like, I think to some extent that could be the case, because it's like, why not? If there was a greater civilization out there, why wouldn't they then come to Earth and help us get our shit together? Because we are a mess here. Well, and show us the way.
And you would think in theory, this whole idea of like, okay, well, if you're not willing to work with your partner or whatever, then you're really shooting yourself in the foot and limiting yourself of how advanced you can become or how rich you can become or whatever it is. Because if you can actually work together instead of fighting with each other, then your potential to grow together, further on than you would be able to get if you were just having your own personal, if you were only thinking about yourself selfishly and only having your needs met versus trying to meet the needs of others as well, and then together become more advanced or rich or whatever it may be. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're like shorthanding yourself by only trying to better yourself and not willing to work with others or think of the greater good.
It could kind of apply to the podcasting industry. Like, we have always seen it as better to collaborate with other creators because we both benefit from that, versus if you try to stay apart and just be competitive about it, then you kind of miss out on that mutual growth when you work together.
I think with the alien example, there also is a risk, though. Like, imagine, we have technology to beam a signal out to...
Which we have, by the way.
Yeah.
We've beamed signals out to space before.
So now imagine that other alien civilizations have the technology to beam a signal like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just thinking about us. They might not even know who we are. They could be thinking, okay, we're going to beam this signal out. There might be another civilization, maybe with more technology, that doesn't have the best of intentions. And they're going to see that signal and they're going to say, hey, this planet has some pretty nice natural resources that we can use. We don't really care about the people. We're just going to look at that signal, blow it up, take the resources.
Yeah.
So you're running that risk. You can either be able to cooperate, or you could maybe get blown up. So everyone's kind of maybe not beaming that signal because they don't want to run the risk. And it's like, maybe people are waiting, different civilizations. Who's going to be the first one to kind of
to put it out there? Yeah. And there's always that risk.
Yeah, because
it could really benefit you, but it could also destroy your ass. I see.
What has history shown us?
At least here on this planet, not good.
I think that extends to the rest of the universe.
Most likely.
I don't think that this idea of all of us getting along in this utopia of like, we all like are fair and trade with one another and everybody's going to be happy and it's going to be this good old time is a reality anywhere in our universe. I think there is good and evil, which we'll get into the problem of evil, but I think there's good and evil throughout the entire universe. I 100% believe there's civilizations out there that are malicious, that will take over other civilizations and exploit them or enslave them or do whatever they want or just destroy them.
Makes the most logical sense, yeah.
It's just...
For my own anxiety, I like to think they're all really nice and just trying to help us.
Well, sorry to pop your bubble there, but that's not the case, I don't think.
It's not a cake of rainbows for us all to share.
Think about it. If that were the case, all aliens are good. All civilizations beyond our solar system are all getting along. There's a big federation. They all have this big council. They get together and they make these universal laws that are followed throughout the universe. If that were the case, it would be in their best interest to come down here and get rid of the fools running the world and institute the same standards that they have throughout the entire universe.
Not necessarily if they have a universal law about free will and planets developing at their own pace.
That's true. But if that were the case, I don't think there would be this big federation of all these civilizations then. I think then
Well, maybe there's more good ones than bad ones, and so they have the ultimate power.
But they got the most weapons. There's still that they got the most weapons. But there's still that clash, though, and there's always going to be this fight between the two.
That's a really interesting concept to think about. How you'd have to put trust into something else if you were going to try to make a decision that would benefit you both. You'd have to hope that they are thinking the same, and if you don't, then you could ultimately be screwed.
Well, the last thing they'd want to do is risk their own civilization's well-being in order to help another.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reality of the alien problem, is that I do believe that they are observing. I think some of the UFOs we're seeing are potentially even like their drones, or potentially these scouts that are kind of scouting out the Earth. And I think they've been observing us for a long time, but they're not intervening because they know that we have nuclear weapons. We have all these things that can cause a lot of destruction.
They don't know what our response could be.
So right. They don't know what we're going to take. We're very unpredictable. We are probably far less evolved than most species out there.
Mm-hmm.
And in comparison to technology wise, we're probably significantly far back there when it comes to our technological advances. And so they're kind of sitting back, monitoring, waiting to see kind of what happens. They're just sitting back, enjoying the show while we're doing what we do here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was a good one. I like that.
This is kind of a weird segue, but have you ever gone out with your friends? You're going to go out for a night on the town. You're going to go to a party, a concert, or maybe clubbing, and you go to dinner first. You have dinner. You end up eating too much, and you just feel super bloated to the point where you don't want to go out after dinner anymore. You just want to go home, get some sweatpants on, and crawl into your bed. No shame in that whatsoever. Been there, done that. But with Ritual, they are changing the game because they've created Symbiotic Plus with that weird gut stuff in mind. It contains clinically studied prebiotics, probiotics, and a postbiotic to support a balanced gut microbiome. Reason why you're bloated and feeling real crappy is because your gut microbiome is pissed off. But ever since I started taking Ritual's Symbiotic Plus, I gotta say, I feel much lighter. I feel like my digestive system is working at optimum levels, and I rarely feel bloated anymore. Ritual's daily 3-in-1 prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic has 2 of the world's most clinically studied probiotic strains to help support the relief of mild and occasional bloating, gas, and even diarrhea. None of those are fun. So why include a postbiotic, which I didn't even know there was different probiotic, postbiotic, symbiotic. I didn't even know any of this stuff existed. But Ritual has shown me the light. A postbiotic provides fuel to the cells that make up the gut lining and supports a healthy gut barrier, which is a win-win. Get your gut microbiome in the best shape of its life with Ritual's Symbiotic Plus. Symbiotic Plus and Ritual are here to celebrate, not hide your insides. There's no more shame in your gut game. That's why Ritual is offering our listeners 10% off during your first 3 months. Visit ritual.com/mile to start Ritual or add Symbiotic Plus to your subscription today. So let's move into Pascal's wager. Heard of this one before? I think I've talked about this one in the past, maybe in school.
Yeah, so this one is kind of similar to the prisoner's dilemma, but we make it a little bit more fun by adding in eternal damnation. So
nice. Yeah. That's
my
always
favorite
fun.
Topic.
Oh yeah. So
okay. So congrats. If you're listening to this, you are alive.
Woo!
The bad news is because you're alive, you've been forced into a wager. And you won't know the outcome of this wager until you die. But you have to make a bet. And the bet is, does God exist? Now, answer carefully, because if you make the wrong bet, you could burn in hell for eternity.
Why is this what I deal with every day? This is a wager I take every morning. This is the
human dilemma for sure.
So obviously you got 2 options: God exists or God does not exist. And there's these two possible results for what happened if we die. Again, God exists or if he doesn't. There's no in between allowed. So like in this scenario, you can't be agnostic, etc. It's either he exists or he does not exist.
So you're a believer or not basically
exactly.
You're a believer or you're an atheist kind of thing.
Exactly. In this scenario, yeah. Okay, so there's four possible outcomes here. Let's say, number one, you do believe in God and God is real. Yay. So now you spend eternity in heaven, never-ending bliss, amazing. Number two is you do believe in God, but God is not real. So nothing happens when you die. You just go to the ground, whatever. Number three is you don't believe in God and God isn't real. Again, nothing happens. Or number four, you don't believe in God, but God is real. So you spend eternity in hell.
And there's no option here for God is real, but he's nice and he spares people from hell.
Well, no.
So Blaise Pascal was a Catholic philosopher. So his wager is based on Catholic theology. And, basically, yeah, the non-believers, unfortunately, will burn. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So obviously heaven is considered to be like the realm of eternal everlasting bliss, and it's reserved for people who genuinely believe in God during their lives and lived according to, right, exactly. So they were, good people believing in God their whole lives, going to church, praying, converting others, whatever it may be. So for this exercise alone, we're going to assume that truly believing in God means you have to have lived a religious life. There's no safety net.
You can't just at the end make a little prayer.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And no, just going to church on Christmas and Easter. Yeah.
You're full in or you're not.
The seasonal believer.
Yeah. Either you're in or you're not.
Yeah. We call them creasters.
Creasters.
In the Catholic Church.
Really? Creasters?
Creasters.
Oh.
Christmas and Easter.
Oh,
see you at Christmas, see you at Easter.
That's hilarious. I've never heard that.
So,
Creaster.
And then, of course, hell is considered the eternal damnation to a realm of never-ending suffering and agony. So it's reserved for bad or evil people and non-believers in God.
So just non-believers get to go with murderers.
Yeah, that's right.
Evil people.
And this isn't just like you'd go down there and chill and it's like, drinking beer.
Forever.
No, you're literally screaming in pain every
Forever.
second of your eternal damnation.
I cannot believe you grew up
it's brutal. Like you're watching people boil and scream and be tortured by demons. And
I don't believe in hell personally, but in
this one you might.
Okay, excuse me.
When we're talking
this is an experiment.
Okay, so second though, if God doesn't exist, then nothing happens after we die. There's eternal nothingness, but we don't experience it, obviously. So, it's either heaven, hell, or nothing.
Yeah, you could think of nothing kind of like where you were before you were born. No consciousness, you can't be really sad or happy about it because you won't be around to experience it. So you would consider it a neutral result, essentially. Nothing. No thing happens.
So what are you going to choose, folks?
Well, it seems like if we're not really factoring in if you want to live your life believing in God, and we're just talking about the outcome in the end, your best option is to believe in God because there's really no bad outcome with that.
Yes.
You believe in God and nothing happens. You believe in God, you go to heaven, or those are the two options.
Yes,
so.
However, it's just remember, it's not as easy as saying, "Oh yeah, I believe in God." You have
you
have to live your life doing what traditionally.
So you got to live your life as a God-fearing individual,
which I would never want to do.
So there you go. There's the dilemma for you.
Well, the real dilemma is we don't know which God. There are many gods. There are many different ways that humans say is the ultimate way to heaven. How are you supposed to figure out which exactly is the right path?
And that's actually a really common objection to this wager is the many gods objection.
Mm-hmm.
Which one do I worship? Which is the right one? So this is
Catholic God in this scenario?
Yeah.
Okay.
Catholic, Christian. He was a Catholic philosopher, but
okay.
So God Almighty, the Holy Trinity. All right. We're talking.
Well, I want to know your answer
Father,
first.
Son, the Holy Ghost.
You tell me.
What Blaise Pascal might have thought a pious, God-fearing life looked like probably is different than
true.
Today's standards. So you can apply today's standards, but I mean, just think of someone that's very religious and goes to church and tries to live
fully
a
in
Christ-like life. Yeah.
I want to know your answer first.
Of course you do.
He's like, I don't know, man. I fall asleep to this every night.
I mean, literally, this is what I wrestle with. I was just telling her the other day that I've been having a lot of dreams about this exact wager. I've had a lot of past experiences in the church come up in my dreams, and I've woken up with feelings of I'm living my life wrong, and I'm not doing the right thing by God and by my family and my daughter, and it's been this huge dilemma for me, which I'm sure if you're religious or Christian, you're probably like, that's God telling you.
That's the comments you're gonna get. Or it's you're wrestling with childhood trauma.
Well, I
also dream of my childhood trauma.
Which that's the thing is like, is it God speaking to me? Is it my subconscious mind that is processing through these things, and causing me to think about this? Because the thing about it is, like, once I kind of come out of sleep and I really sit there and kind of think on it for a minute, I'm like, no, I'm on the right path for myself, and just realizing that by removing the barriers that religion put on me and the way that I thought, what I was able to experience, I don't know that I'd ever want to go back to what that was like. But for this particular wager, obviously believing in God doesn't necessarily have a bad outcome, because, you know, we're dealing with heaven and hell here, and I know way too much about hell to even take that gamble. So I think I'd probably believe in God, honestly, because
there's no bad outcome.
And this is the thing that I've thought about too. It's like, well, if you believe in God, the worst case scenario is God isn't real,
but if you go a step further and you believe in God, but then there is no heaven or hell, nothing happens, and you spent your whole life believing in something or being afraid of something or living your life according to a set of beliefs that weren't even real, that's a huge risk in itself, because all we do know is real is life right now. And if we live it based on what we think is going to happen afterwards, I think that's almost worse. But I guess when you really factor in like fucking eternal torture and hell, it's like,
that changes the...
I don't know.
And that's another thing people bring up. You know, I'm not losing nothing potentially if I want to live a life, you know, partying and doing whatever I want, and, you know, not living a comparatively pious life. You would be losing out on something that you really want to do, I guess, in your life.
But I think people would argue against that too, with like those things that you just mentioned. That, you know, are they actually? Is that actually living your life? Is that actually living with purpose and meaning? And
think about it. If we're going by Catholic beliefs, homosexuality is a no, right? Like by the book.
Yeah. I mean,
so what if you are a queer person and you have to then mask who you are and live a life that is not authentic to you in order to go to heaven, or to at least have a chance to get in?
Right.
That seems like a big sacrifice. It's not as easy as just like, I'll believe, so I'm covered. You know? What if you miss out your whole life on, you know, being your true self and a romantic partner and, you know, all that?
Yeah. And that's certainly like something to consider. And a lot of people have brought this up. The response to that would be, well, you know, whatever you do in life, it's finite. So you would be getting a finite gain and risking infinite loss and giving up infinite good.
Yeah, because you got to remember, with this theology, there's only one life. There's only one shot at being this. Versus other theologies, there's potentially life after this, or reincarnation or something, where you might get another shot at living on earth again or something like that. Versus this is like, this is one life, and as a person, you will cease to exist on earth, but you will continue to exist in either hell or heaven.
This is tough though, because Blaise Pascal, I'm guessing, was like pretty by the fucking books. So he probably would have been against like birth control, right?
Oh yeah.
So I would have to have had, like, I could have unlimited babies.
Yeah. Well, and
just for a chance to go to heaven.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of people today that do live like that. And I don't want to live like them. I don't, you know.
I don't want that. So I have one baby. I think a lot of work already.
That's like the one thing that I think about with this particular scenario is, could you live a life like God or Jesus or whatever, but still live out your best potential. And I think that's hard because for everybody that's different, depending on what you want your life to look like. I think for some people it's like, well, the things that I want to do or who I am in this life directly go against this theology. So therefore I cannot.
Yeah.
I
really feel bad for people who face this dilemma on a daily basis. It's got to be really hard. Yeah. I mean, yeah, to some degree, but.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because like I was taught from an infant basically that this is, I need to live my life with heaven in mind always. And I have to always keep that in my head. And I think I've had a number of experiences that have sort of broke that down and has showed me other possibilities. But at the same time, it's like, it never leaves my head. It's never something that I just can like push away and be like, I'll never revisit that again. I feel like this is a dilemma that's going to continue to come up in my life over the years. And especially when I go through situations of loss, if you lose loved ones, and that always gets those thoughts thinking. I think it goes for everybody too, whether you're religious or not. I think you start having that, you start thinking about those existential problems of where did they go? What happened to them? Does it continue on, or are they just done?
The thing though is because I never had any of those thoughts introduced to me at such a young age, and it's never been something that I've really struggled with. When my loved ones have passed, I never worry about if they're being tortured in hell. That never crosses my mind. I know that they were good people, and in my heart, I believe that, obviously people would disagree with me, but for me, it's not ever been a struggle. I'm very comfortable not believing, having no idea, taking a gamble with it.
That's interesting though, because although I don't believe in hell and I've never like been concerned about someone that I love being tortured, I still haven't thought of like, where did they go? What if there is nothing and they're just in the ground? And that really bothers me.
That I do have.
I really hate thinking
have that.
When you close your eyes and you die, that's it. And all of this was for what?
I
do have that thought. I just never worry about them being in hell.
Yeah.
Well, when you start looking at what's the meaning of your life, that's where it gets tough, right? Because if it does all end after this, then what is the meaning of life? Are we here to just exist? Are we here to just have the best possible ride possible? And that's it. And that's the point of it. Love and try to leave the world a better place before you go. And
for me, that's how I see it, because that's all I truly know. That's all I can know for a fact is here and now. Yeah, and what I'm doing to affect people in this moment.
I would be interested though, because for those of you who didn't grow up religious, I think it'd be interesting to have you read the religious texts and read, or even read just different philosophers' sort of points of view on the afterlife, and, even situations where it doesn't necessarily involve heaven or hell. I mean, we could be talking about, you could be returning to an energy source, the energy source of the universe, or the great nothingness, and understanding what nothingness is, that we all came from nothing, but nothing is clearly something. You can't come from nothing, right? Even though,
that's the greatest question of all, right, is like, how did humans get here?
Right.
So Julia, how are we supposed to see this? Are we supposed to be factoring in the idea that if, we don't want to live our lives according to the Bible?
Yeah. So Blaise Pascal, who created this wager, kind of wanted to use it as a proof showing that it's plausible or, rational to believe that God exists. And, ideally, he's hoping
that people will choose to follow God.
Yeah.
As a result. Yeah.
And so what it's trying to show is that believing in God is the best outcome. But then the objections come in, the many gods theory, or, what about reincarnation? What about the possibility that, the afterlife looks different? And so, that's kind of why I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think that this wager is really interesting, though, because it touches on a lot of common anxieties people have about the afterlife and dying, and, the lives that we lead right now. It's such a common thing. I think even if you're not religious, for me, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I'm not a practicing, member. And I have my own ideas on like, where we go after we die. I'm more of a, we are the universe kind of girl, but those anxieties still creep up like in the back of my mind, because that's what I grew up with and was raised with. It's like, it's always there. Like hell is real. Like, what if I'm doing the wrong thing and I'm going to go there? And it can be really paralyzing. And I think, it's interesting because for a lot of people, if you grew up religious, whether or not you still are, like you were saying, that'll always kind of be there.
Yeah, I don't think you can ever shake it. I don't think you can cleanse yourself of it.
I think the outcome should be edited here. I think number 2 should say, you do believe in God and God isn't real. So therefore you live a happy, free, authentic life of freedom.
Yeah.
I like that option.
Yeah, you could do that. Like I would like to say that would be my option right now. But then what if I go to hell after and then I'm burning for eternity? Even though I live this beautiful, great, free, happy, whatever life.
Yeah.
Now,
See, that's why I refuse to believe that. I just don't believe in that.
Yeah. Well, that's the great part too, is you don't have to. And you can also say, well, I don't believe in that kind of God. I believe in something else. And that's, that's what's going to happen after we die. So you can think that everything he's saying is bullshit and kind of disregard it. But
I should have said, I should have changed number 3. Sorry, I read number 2. But that would be my answer to this is number 3. You don't believe in God and God isn't real, so nothing happens and I live my life freely.
There's also the possibility though that if you do end up in hell, a lot of your favorite people and loved ones will be down there with you.
That's what I'm saying.
So the one perk to hell is that you probably won't be alone. There'll be a lot of us down there.
First, I'm saving you a spot.
Thank you. Versa. You know it. I'll have a michelada waiting for you on the other side.
We can all get whipped together.
Misery loves company. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's my option. All I know is right here and now, I want to live an authentic, free life, and that's more important to me than I know it sounds crazy, but then the gamble of eternity.
I've always thought with hell though, like why is it that if the devil wants people to go to hell, why would he then torture you and make you hate your life there? Rather than
make it awesome.
Wouldn't it be smarter to like get you to like him and team up and
video games, and alcohol, drugs?
That's what's so interesting to me. Yeah, it's like sinning. All the pleasures of life essentially are okay for the devil.
Yeah, why wouldn't he make his place lit
and just be like
more people would go there?
And that's to me that's kind of like one of the
offending people.
One of the problems with hell for me was that. Why would he, what's the point if sinning is like doing these things, and some of them are very, very bad. Obviously there's sins that are, nobody should be doing, but there's also a lot of sins according to the Bible that really aren't that big of a deal. And so why would it be that by doing those things, you end up in hell? And then the devil, when you get there, is like, oh, you've been doing all the things that I've been wanting you to do. Well, too fucking bad. You're going to be just
doesn't the devil
eternally damned.
Like to be evil and to torture people? So he enjoys it.
But the devil's ultimate goal is to overtake God. And
I see what he's got to give perks.
Why wouldn't he want to build up an army of people and actually try to make himself stronger by having all these people behind him rather than continuing to destroy and break them down?
So Josh, what's your final answer here? And this isn't just for the game.
Wow.
Make your decision for life. Well, I'm curious. Well, okay, it is just for the game. So say whatever you want. I got it.
You can have a practical answer, like what you think in this situation, all things considered with his wager. What is the most prudent? What's the most practical, rational thing to do? And what you would do. Because obviously, I think all of us would say believing in God is the most rational answer, but none of our asses are going to church every Sunday. I mean, I'm doing plenty of things that
God, according to the church, they wouldn't be happy with.
Practical and rational answer is to not believe in God. Final answer, case closed. What do you think?
I think I have to pick one of these options.
Yep. You can have a practical and a rational.
Well, so the practical and rational would be in this situation.
Right, that's the same.
Yeah, but
okay. Ignore me.
And then
in this situation,
what you would actually do.
Right.
Based on, I reject this part of his wager as being necessary. If you accept all the premises, what you would choose, probably the rational answer, and then
why don't you have a few moments to think on it? And I
have my answer.
Okay.
So my practical answer would be to believe in God. Heaven is real. But I obviously don't live that life. So what I am doing is I'm not believing in God, and I would hope then that God is not real because I don't want to go to hell. Or that I guess that hell is not real. Maybe heaven's real and I'll still go.
There you go.
No, but yeah, I mean, that's in theory, like that's the most logical thing is I don't want to burn in hell forever. So if that's really going to happen, then I should probably get my ass to church after this. Just
Are
saying.
you going to?
Nope. No, I'm not.
All right. What about you, Julia? I'm curious.
I think obviously my practical answer, keeping everything constant in the wager would be believing in God. And I, me answer, kind of disregarding a lot of some of the things he says because I don't agree with it, I have objections to it, would be I believe in God in my own way. So I guess just trying to live my life, keeping those things in mind, what I believe in, trying to be the best person I can, ideally. And, just trying not to do stuff that I think is harmful to others.
Yeah.
Just trying to be a good person.
Be the best person you can.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy.
Kind of really like leaving it in God's hands, like that he loves his children and, knows that we're good people. If you're trying to be a good person, kind of meets you where you're at. And, Jesus died for our sins. So,
right. You're right.
Shout out.
That's how I see it. I mean, I just don't, I can't even comprehend a world where you could be this amazing person, do all these incredible things, help others and impact the world and then be sent to hell.
And
that just, I do not believe that.
On the opposite, like do these horrific things, kill people, abuse people, steal, lie, cheat, whatever. And then
like Kenneth Copeland.
Right.
That he gets to go to heaven.
Right. Or just murderers in general who are like, oh, but then I found God right before I died.
Right.
It's like, what? No, it's too fucking late. So you're telling me that you get to go and I don't?
Yeah.
Because I didn't go to church all the time, but I believe that I'm a good person. I believe everyone in this room is a good person. And so therefore, in theory, we should all be going to heaven regardless.
Exactly. That's why I just don't believe in it. All right, Josh, back to you. Final answer. Right here and right now.
I think for me personally, through my experiences and life in general, have kind of come to the conclusion that I do believe in a God, and I use that term loosely. Similar to the way Julia thinks, I'd say, is kind of my answer. But I think it's far more complicated than what anybody's ever even realized and understands, and what even the greatest philosophers of all time, it's far more complex than they ever thought. Because, I mean, you got to think about, he was making this wager with the information he had at the time. And it'd be interesting to hear an updated version of this, with all the things that we know now and just how much bigger a universe is. And the way that the Bible lays things out makes everything way too simple, in my opinion. It's like, it's either this or it's that. And it's like, God wrote the rules on some stone tablets and there you go. End of story. This is what you follow. This is the way though. But it's like, what we've realized about the universe and about life in itself is that it's far more complex than this. It's not that simple. And there's gray areas everywhere. And so there's no way to live your life, because that's the thing, right? Is that no matter how much of a believer you are, what religion you are, we are all the same. Some people think that because they are religious or they believe a certain ideology that they're somehow like higher than another person. And I think that's what bothered me the most about church and, my personal experience is that I ran into a lot of people because they believed in God and followed it to a T and were choosing option number one here, that they are somehow a better human being than I am, even if I'm only a few pegs down. And I think that's what really bothered me, is because it's creating this hierarchy that should never exist. And then when you look at the churches themselves, there's hierarchies within the church across all religions. There's always somebody at the top and there's always those at the bottom. And the way that I understand the religious texts and the Bible is that that's not the way it was meant to be. That's not the way that God or Jesus would have ever wanted it. I mean, Jesus literally went in the temples and turned the tables over and like there's so many examples of where he was like, this is not how it should be.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be so much simpler than that. And I think that's where it gets lost for me, is where I still believe that I do believe in God. It's just maybe different than what some, a Christian might think.
Higher power. I do too.
A higher power.
I do too.
And that, because God is it's a very loose term. You could apply that to a lot of things. Apply it to a creator. I don't think that I don't think this is all just random and by chance, and we're all just kind of a part of this weird experiment that's going on, and that's how it is. So I would say that, that's the thing, is I would still go with number one probably, but I would interpret it a little bit differently from the way that I guess Pascal would. I'd kind of modernize it a little bit and be like, I think you can still believe in God, be a good person, still live your life to your fullest potential, and still ultimately achieve heaven in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I believe.
It's just, does anybody have the right description for that? Is there actually instructions for this? I don't believe so.
I don't
believe anybody.
Supposed to.
I don't believe anybody knows the 100% steps, because has anybody gone to heaven, come back to earth, other than Jesus in the Bible, which was thousands of years ago? And has anybody done that in the last?
Well, some people would argue they have. There are stories and books out there of people who believe they like near-death experiences.
Yeah, but
those, you have to take their word for it. Like,
right.
There's no one out there who's
but there's
like, has a
nobody's
picture of God.
Right.
They're
Right.
like, look at me, my selfie with Jesus that I met.
Here's my room key from heaven.
Yeah,
right.
Nobody's got that.
Right.
Is what I'm saying, is that everybody has experiences that you could say, that was heaven, that was the afterlife, but they don't really know. You're just experiencing something, and what are we all supposed to just take each other's experiences for reality? If that were the case, shit would be wild, man.
Mm-hmm.
If we're all like, oh my God, that's real, you had a dream about this 3-headed monster, that's not reality. That's not something that we've experienced here in the flesh. So I think, I don't know, I'm probably getting carried away here, but
that's how I got Sherry Shriner, though. He was one of the head angels.
Right. That's true.
He came back, gave us the scoop, and
true that.
And look, there you go. Look at the people who do claim that they
You want to follow Sherry?
Were appointed by God. Never ends well.
Interesting. Today, I wanted to give a little shout out to one of our team members, Sydney, who many of you know from the sesh, who works tirelessly behind the scenes on our merch and makes sure that it all gets into your hot little hands. She is such an important piece of the puzzle when it comes to Mile Higher Media. And when every person, moment, and penny counts in your business, you can't afford to take any of them for granted. And Stamps.com gets it, because for the last 25 years, they've been helping businesses like yours save time and money so you can focus on your business, knowing Stamps.com has all your postage needs covered with premium discounts and great rates. It's like having a post office in your office. With Stamps.com, all you need is a computer and a printer. They even send you a free scale, so you'll have everything you need to get started. And if you need a package pickup, you can easily schedule it through your Stamps.com dashboard. Running a business isn't cheap, especially when it comes to fulfilling orders for customers. Luckily, Stamps.com has huge carrier discounts, up to 84% off USPS and UPS rates. For 25 years, Stamps.com has been indispensable for over 1 million businesses. Get access to the USPS and UPS services you need right from your computer anytime, day or night. No lines, no traffic, no waiting. So set your business up for success when you get started at Stamps.com today with promo code MILEHIGHER for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a free digital scale. And there are no long-term commitments or contracts involved, which is always great. Just go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, and enter code MILEHIGHER.
So in the last philosophy episode, we talked about Robert Nozick's experience machine.
Yep.
Oh, yes. Right.
And one thing that came up, it was sort of about what is a life full of pleasure? Is that the life that we want to live that is only pleasure? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys remember what your thoughts on that?
Like, would you plug into the experience machine and get to, live all of this, live out your dreams, eternal bliss, but you're actually in reality in a pod floating in water or whatever?
Yeah, I'd say no.
And the whole argument of like, okay, well, if you are only experiencing good, then how good really is the good because you have nothing bad to compare it to.
The value of experiencing bad things.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
Yeah, right. So this one kind of plays off of that.
Yeah. So it's about something that, we're all very familiar with because we were just talking about it, and that's heaven. And when you think of heaven, what do you think that would be like? Would you be sad at any point in heaven, or would it be eternal bliss? Because when people talk about heaven, in religion especially,
it's eternal bliss.
It's eternal bliss.
There is no crying. There is no heartache. There's none of that. It's pure bliss.
And I think it's interesting because when we talk about a life worth living, a life with meaning, what we would want on earth, there's suffering because it gives our life meaning and texture. Will heaven be meaningfully blissful in any sort of like real sense?
Like, would it get old?
Would it get old? And are you actually happy?
Yeah. Well, it's like your endorphin levels are going to be, your serotonin levels are going to be through the roof all the time. And that's the hard part, is like, depending on whose definition of heaven you're looking at, that could look differently for various different groups. And the way that I always understood it was, heaven is a place where you are not inhabiting your physical body from earth. And it's essentially where your soul goes in essence. But the way that it's described is also like you're still in a humanoid form. I sang a lot of Bible songs growing up, and it'd be like, Jesus lives in a big, big house with lots and lots of room, and there's food, and there's like football out in the yard. And like, it's this very earthly,
that's how to get the Americans.
Look at, it's this very, and like as a kid, you're like, oh, hell yeah, that sounds amazing. Like pizza every day. I can eat pizza every day and play football with my friends, and we just all have a good time. Like, that obviously sounds amazing. It's like the ultimate bliss. But as you get older, you start thinking through that a little bit more, and you're like, what would that actually look like? And how would that differ from how I experience it here? And how would it actually be better? And that's the thing, is like, I guess you're also taking in consideration, you're now experiencing a closeness with your creator that you've never been able to experience before. So it's beyond the connection that you could have with your creator here while on earth. So once you get to heaven, you're actually in the Lord's residence, where he is. And so the level, it's like, I don't know. And that's the hard part, is like, is that physical happiness that you're feeling? Is it just you are at peace and everything is just blissful? It's a really, really hard question, honestly,
I think
to think about.
Not only would we get bored, because you think about all the stuff that, if I go to heaven, I want to see these people, I want to do these things with them, I want to do these things, fly, or I don't know, breathe underwater, stuff I can't even comprehend that I wasn't able to do in my mortal body. And it's like, I could probably spend so many lifetimes just checking that all off and then doing it again and again after that. But the question is, it's forever. Think about 100 billion years times 20 times a million times a billion. Like,
it's a long, long time.
Will you run out of stuff to do?
Yeah.
What do you do in that? What do you do in that situation? You've been alive for 100 million gazillion years, and you're like, I'm bored. You're gonna call God? And
sounds like terrible.
Hey God, I've been flying a lot lately, and I'm bored as fuck. Can you provide something else?
I think
it also lends to like, what's the point? Right. What is the point? To live in an eternity with him, but then what? What does that look like? I remember my mom always saying that to me. Like, it'd be like in our prayer every night, be like, live in eternity with him. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great and all, but like, what does that actually look like? And this is the thing. This question exactly pretty much got me thrown out of the church, because you bring this question to your pastor and you ask him this question. Watch how fast they get upset with you.
What question exactly?
The questioning heaven. Just questioning heaven and presenting this idea that, well, heaven sounds great and all, but if I'm there for eternity, aren't I going to get bored? What the hell am I going to do there? Obviously, I'll be with my loved ones, and we can have a few family dinners, but it's like, what are we going to do that over and over and over? And that's where it just, that's what really frustrates, I think, a lot of pastors, is when you do get to this level of think. I mean, this is requiring a high level of thinking to really think about, because you're deconstructing this. You're deconstructing the idea of heaven and the afterlife, and you're really looking at it objectively, as opposed to just blindly believing in what you've been told and what a text says. But instead, you're actually diving in deeper and trying to figure out, okay, well, what does that actually look like? Would that actually be great? Because that's the thing. I think there's a lot of, and I can't remember a lot of the Bible verses and chapters around heaven and exactly the way that it describes it. But I think this is a very valid question. Like, what would you do? And I think somebody who is a leader in Christianity would probably say, well, you're not factoring in what it would be like to be so close to your maker and to Jesus and be in the presence of the Almighty God. It's something that we can't comprehend as mortal humans here on earth. And therefore you have to believe in the fact that once you get there, things are going to be completely different for you. And you're not going to have the need or the thought pop in your head of, this is boring, I'm not running out of things to do. You're just going to be kind of like plugged into the hive, so to speak, of this like hive mind that is God. And once you're there, there is no unplugging. You kind of lose independence to some extent of who you are, because you're kind of plugged into the bigger family, I guess. I don't know. That's just kind of the way I imagine it. Is like God is this like beehive, and you're all in this hive together, and God is the queen bee, right? And we're all kind of just like working within the hive. And you kind of just, you might be this independent bee, but when you join the hive, you leave all that behind and you join in with the greater mission there, and that's worshiping your God.
I wonder then, people have also raised the question, what if my loved ones, what if one of them does something really bad and they end up in hell, and I go to heaven, and you check your little watch and it's been 150 years and they should be ideally up there by now and they're not. Like, is it really heaven if I'm not as happy because someone I love is not there? Even if they did something horrible. I mean, probably even Ted Bundy's mom still loves him deep down and would want him there with her.
Interesting thought.
Right.
So it's like the thought of someone that you care about burning in hell would probably take away from my heaven experience.
Happiness. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
But I believe, based on the way that it's described, is that you don't have the capacity to even think that way. That your range of emotions.
So you're like brainwashed.
Well, you're not worried about what's going on outside of heaven at that point. And that's the thing for me, is like, I don't know how much like seeing your family members is really part of the goal there. Like, I think in our minds, it's like, that would be nice to be able to see your grandparents have passed and meet all of your ancestors and everything like that, and have this big old family reunion in heaven. But I don't think that's like the ultimate goal. I think that might be a perk, but I think that's not necessarily like, for us here on earth, that's obviously like, oh, that's a great reason to believe in heaven, is like, it's see my loved ones again. But I don't think that's like the ultimate goal there. The ultimate goal is not to just go be with your loved ones, but to be with the one that loves you above all. You talk to any Christians, and what's the hierarchy for them? God, family, football. All right. Just kidding. But God, family, and then themselves, or something else. And so God is always above the family, even over your spouse, even over your son, daughter. That God takes precedence over all of those things.
I just can't understand that mindset.
But I feel like a lot of people who are religious, when they experience a loss of a loved one, they immediately are like, oh, well, they're in a better place. I'll meet them again till we meet again. I know that, you'll be waiting for me up there. And I think that they use that a lot for comfort. So in my opinion, it does seem like it's a very big piece, whether or not they really like believe it. I don't
Yes,
know.
that's a good point.
But I think they certainly use it as a crutch to some extent. And I hope that doesn't sound like offensive, but you know what I mean? I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, I know I'll see them again. This is just a temporary goodbye. And they're waiting for me up there. And
which I tend to tell myself that too. Not in heaven, but
I do too.
Or whatever heaven is. I always feel like I will somehow be reconnected, or that their spirit is like always with me, or something along those lines. So I definitely can see how that's comforting to people.
The next topic we're going to get into is the problem of evil. And this is something that has vexed, theists and atheists alike. It's a lot. But the central question is, if evil exists, how is it that God exists, or how can it be possible or plausible that God exists? So generally, the logical problem of evil assumes three things about God. That first, he is omniscient or omnipresent. He's all-knowing. He's everywhere. He knows everything. Two, that he's omnipotent. So he's all-powerful. He can do anything. You hear people talk about
miracles and
through God, all things are possible.
Creation. Yep.
And three, lastly, omnibenevolent. So perfectly good, morally perfect. He's loving totally and completely. It's those three things: omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. At the same time, clearly, evil exists. Not just evil, but like unspeakable evil in this world exists. So how can those three things be possible at the same time? It seems that it's not compatible with at least one or multiple of those three omnis.
Like God couldn't create evil?
Well, he could, but like why?
If he's omnibenevolent, why would he? If he's all loving, why would he want?
If he's perfectly good and moral, then why would he create evil? And if he's all knowing and all powerful, I mean, like he's the most powerful being in the world, why would he choose to create evil if he's also perfectly good and moral?
So if he does create evil, he's not perfectly good and moral.
And if it doesn't come from him, then that would mean something else has the power to create evil, and either he allows it to happen, which would make him not perfectly good, or he can't stop it, which is a huge problem, because then he's not omnipotent. He's not all powerful. And if it's, outside of his purview, if he doesn't know about it, I mean, that would just make him not omniscient.
Okay. But don't many people see it as if the devil was the one who created evil? How did he get that power if God created the devil?
Why would God create the devil?
Well, okay. I don't know much about the Bible, but the devil was an angel at first, right? And then a fallen angel went down to hell. What was his angel name?
Lucifer.
Oh, that was his. Okay, so he just kept the same name. Yep. Got it. Okay.
So, biblically, let me explain how this looks biblically. Because obviously, when I hear all of those things, I go immediately to Genesis, like literally first chapter of the Bible, right? We're talking about the creation of the heavens and the earth, the universe, essentially earth, humans. And it goes back to Adam and Eve. Not Adam and Steve.
Right.
Adam and Eve.
Oh my God.
Sorry, that my parents always used to say that to me.
Really?
That is so funny.
My dad would be like, it was Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
God,
and
that's
I'm like,
terrible.
Dude.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways. So going back to the creation story, God could have created a perfect universe, a perfect world. But it's kind of like when he it still goes back to the problem of God maybe isn't all powerful, because if that were the case, he could control anything he creates, can he not? It would make sense. So when he created Adam and Eve, they rebelled against God.
Right. They ate the apple.
They ate the apple from the serpent.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like orders from God was to not eat anything in the Garden of Eden. And they ate the apple. They were tempted by the devil and they ate. And basically Adam and Eve fucked it up for all of us for eternity. They screwed up, and therefore that's why we live in the world that we do, is because they rebelled against God
and ate an apple.
But this is the thing, is that God created humans in likeness of him, but he didn't create them in 100% likeness of him. Had that been the case, the rebellion would have never happened in the Garden of Eden. Instead, he gave us free will, which will be the next thing that we talk about after the problem of evil. He gave humans free will, and with our free will, we made a bad decision by eating the apple. And therefore, that set the precedence for all human civilization.
So in theory, God kind of created the world as his own experiment, or like
he wanted to create
a simulation in a way.
He wanted to create creatures that would love him,
but also have the power to make the decision to not,
instead of
and
robots,
to go against him.
Well, it's like, what's the purpose of creating this vast universe, all these planets,
where
you have
everything's
Earth
perfect,
complicated, and it's all perfect, and it provides no meaning to God. Versus if
God
he created,
meaning.
Versus, which is interesting. That's a
spice
whole
it
other
up.
thing to dive into, is why does God need meaning from us? But he created us to worship him, and in turn, it's this mutually beneficial relationship. You believe in me and everything that I did for you, and therefore I will bless you with life after death.
Okay.
But there's still problems with that. That's the thing, is like, he allowed evil to exist. And multiple times throughout the Bible, the evil gets so bad that they're like, we got to wipe the slate clean because it's getting too bad out there.
Why would he be doing that though? Why would he
For
allow
funsies?
Because he's bored.
Yeah. Heaven's boring. We just talked about that.
True. But I don't understand, if he is the all-knowing, the most powerful being in the entire universe, he can do anything and everything. A, why would you create evil? And B, if you create it and it's getting so bad, just make it stop then. And why do we still have evil to this day? Just make evil stop. If he can do it, flip a switch.
It's part of his experiment.
Why is he trying to have an experiment on us, though?
I think the biggest problem comes in with the omnibenevolence is, if he's perfectly good, why is there so much evil? Like,
right. God is the most pure thing in the entire universe. Okay, so then why is at least this earth, so fucked up in so many ways?
And in the Bible, it states that he is all these things: omnibenevolent, omnipotent. It's a new word to me.
This is generally kind of
it's just what people believe.
Yeah, the conception of, I'm not, don't know the Bible front to back as I maybe should, but generally this is, this is what they taught us growing up, that God is everywhere at all times. So, he's got your back at all times is kind of what they were telling us, because there's nowhere that he's not, and that he can do anything. He is all powerful, and he's perfect, and he's loving. He's perfectly loving, and he wants nothing but the best for you, and only let that happen. But
he's not.
But if he wants the best for you, then why is there so much suffering in this world?
So some of the defenses, kind of vindicating God's perfect goodness on like theological grounds, are called theodicies, and they try to kind of provide a framework for how God and evil can coexist, sort of a justification for that. And one of those is the soul-making theodicy, where suffering is, a part of God's plan, because, when you suffer, it brings you spiritually closer to him, and, makes you a more spiritually developed person, kind of brings you closer to him, makes you more ready for communion with God in the afterlife.
Which I think is true. I think whether it's with God or just spiritually in general, I think when you experience hardships in life, you're more apt to turn to your spiritual side. And a lot of people that go through really hard things and events and struggles tend to look for greater meaning in their life to get them out of that. And I saw that over and over and over again.
Right.
Versus people that never, live a very easy life, don't have a lot of struggles and things like that. It's kind of a different story for people like that.
It's interesting too, in Catholicism, there is the concept of, it's like a theodicy, redemptive suffering, that when we suffer, we are kind of co-suffering as Jesus did when we crucified him.
Right.
And not only are we redeeming ourselves through our suffering, we're redeeming others, just as he redeemed all of us when he died on the cross.
Interesting.
But
yeah, Jesus dying on the cross completely changed everything. Because prior to that, we had no. So the way that it's kind of laid out is like God created us. God created humans and everything and life on this earth, and it really is kind of like an experiment. Really, he really like conducted an experiment of, I want to create other intelligent beings in my likeness that we'll see if they'll love, and after I do all this for them, will they still love me and honor me and worship me, and basically in thanks for giving you this life and everything. And what he found was, over time, people weren't doing that. People realized sinning's fun. Sinning's great. I'm having a good time. He wiped out a whole city because it was too lit. If you know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, turned it to salt, I believe.
To salt?
Yeah, like completely decimated this because it sounded like Vegas.
Hell.
Like Vegas in the Bible, like literally
so why
Sin
isn't
City.
Vegas salt?
Well, and
why don't we see any of these things happening in today's day and age?
That's a good
All
question.
these old stories.
That's a good question.
He just was like,
well,
enough's enough.
Well, because of after Jesus died. So that's the thing, is like before that, God was kind of like, why isn't this going the way that I expected? This is kind of weird. So he kind of like wiped the slate clean a couple times. The flood, according to the Bible, was he was upset with the way people were living, and he wanted to kind of wipe it out and start over again. And, there's been sort of these cataclysmic events to help bring that about. But then he got to a point where he's like, I'm going to send my only son, Jesus, down to the earth. So I've been conducting business from up here in, whatever realm he's in, and communicating through his prophets through different ways. And so he was like, I'm going to send a human being to earth to basically spread the good word and enlighten everybody on how they should be living and what's the right way to do this. And, that we should be thankful for our Father in heaven, that he created us and takes care of us. And so when he got here, and then the whole story of Jesus, and you get into the whole crucifixion and everything, that was the turning point in human history. And that's where God, after Jesus died for our sins, for the rest of like everybody that comes on this earth, it goes back to Jesus dying on the cross. Like, doesn't matter what year you're born in after he did that he did all that for all the people to come, so that he will take away your sins. Doesn't matter who you are, for the rest of human civilization. And so that's what it goes back to, is from that turning point there. And that's why you don't see events, God wiping it, which maybe that's true, maybe that's not. Maybe there would be events where he would, cataclysmic things that happen here on earth or throughout space or the universe. Could that be God kind of doing some of those things again? I don't know, but that's just a real like rough synopsis of the whole story, I guess.
I think the next thing we'll get into really is the evidential problem of evil, because the logical problem is trying to say, God being omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, and evil existing, logically speaking, cannot coexist together. But the evidential problem of evil is more saying, with all the suffering that we know exists in the world, the horrible suffering, it's not plausible that God exists, or not rational. And there's a couple responses to this. Because before we talked about the soul-making theodicy, where, God wants us to suffer to grow in our spirituality, and that suffering teaches us something. It's important. And no doubt on some level we agree with that. But there's two issues people take with that, is natural evils like childhood cancer or tornadoes or hurricanes that they're not necessarily, talk about climate change and all that kind of stuff.
But caused by humans directly, like.
Right. Because those tornadoes and hurricanes have been around since, the beginning
acts of God, basically.
And how do those things advance our spirituality and force us to grow?
Right. That and animal suffering, which there is plenty of animal suffering. They're not moral agents in the same way that we are. They're not, they're not going to heaven according to, theological teaching. So
that's very interesting. I was going to ask about that. So there is nothing in the Bible about what happens to animals. Do you get to take your pets? Do certain animals go? Or,
growing up, as they tell the kids maybe that your dog's going to heaven, but once you got older, they're like, yeah, actually, there's, animals don't really go to heaven. That's like not a thing.
Okay.
The Bible never really addresses that question directly. There's not like a direct.
So innocent beings, like children who haven't been able to think through this stuff yet, make their own decisions, or haven't been even presented the option to have a decision on it.
Well,
what's the point of them suffering?
Why would God allow an innocent child to have a terminal illness where they won't be able to grow up? They're innocent. They did nothing wrong. What is the point of that? What does that teach them?
Yeah.
It seems it's just an evil that why would a loving God allow that?
This is a really, really tough question that a lot of pastors that I've encountered don't really want to speak to, because it is, I mean, no matter which way you answer this, somebody's going to be upset by it.
Mm-hmm.
And
this is one of the questions I asked you when we first started dating and you were still grappling with religion. And I brought this up to you on the phone one night when we were in high school, remember?
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember what my answer would have been. But
I just remember you were kind of shook by it and trying to justify it.
I'll just explain it the way that somebody in this situation who is a Christian would explain it. And that would be that everything happens for a reason. And as horrible as it is to have a child suffer from this terminal illness, that perhaps God has a greater plan for them. And that maybe their plan was to never spend that much time here on earth, but rather be with him sooner. Or maybe there's something else that God needs them to do.
But what about for animals? That doesn't apply.
Well, animals are not privy to the whole concept of salvation and everything. They are not able to make moral decisions. Animals don't have.
So
morality.
Why make them suffer for no reason?
Because I think we can all agree that animals are capable of suffering. And
yes, absolutely.
They feel emotion
and pain and depression,
but
and everything else.
Do they make do they feel morally like somebody's doing something morally harmful to them? Are they able to make a decision like that? Or are they just
I don't know. But either way, they're still experiencing suffering for no reason. Like, what is the reason for that? Why would God allow that is the question. And I would love to know.
Because the answer is animals are down here and we're up here.
Period, so why make them suffer? There's no reason. Why would a perfect, all-loving, all-powerful God force animals to suffer when there is no point?
Well, why are they suffering?
Because of
they're not going to heaven.
The circumstances of the world.
Right, but there's no point.
That God created.
There's no point to their life. There's no benefit that they bring to.
So why make them suffer?
Because suffering exists in all living creatures. So
God created it though. Why did he create suffering for animals?
But we don't. How do you know they're suffering though? That's the thing. Have you ever asked an animal, "Are you suffering?"
Okay, so you see a starving animal that's dying with ticks and cancer and whatever else.
Are they sitting there thinking,
they're suffering?
I'm suffering.
Yeah,
we're perceiving that they're suffering, but are they actually suffering?
Yes, I believe they know that they're suffering. So they know what pain is. They know they have emotions. So why would any perfect, loving
the same reason
God,
why any human would be suffering?
No, it's different though, because they say that, you suffer and stuff to evolve spiritually and so that you can believe more in God or go to heaven or whatever the reason is. But with animals, it doesn't apply at all because there is no reason for them to suffer. So why would God make them suffer for no reason if he is a perfect, all-loving God?
But they're suffering as a result of what? Us. Humans.
Well, God created humans. God creates everything.
So God gives us free will to make animals suffer if we want to.
So I think this is kind of, brings the discussion to an interesting point that people bring up. A lot of times people might say, well, animal suffering is a part of redemptive suffering because the whole world suffers kind of as Jesus did. But, it does bring in the question of, well, if there's no salvation for them, what's the point? And, maybe it's to teach us something, provide some sort of purpose to us. But that then brings me into this kind of hypothetical situation. And stuff like this happens every day. You can imagine, a baby deer in woods untouched by man is attacked by a wolf. And before it's killed, before the wolf can take any sort of nutritional value from it, a tree falls, it runs away. Sadly, the baby deer suffers and dies an agonizing death. The wolf, was not sustained by any of its, nutrition or whatever. And, it eventually decays. No human ever comes around to even see the bones. So no human knows that this act has even taken place.
Which happens all the time.
So even just think about forest fires that wipe out animal.
we don't necessarily
we know it happens, but we don't see it all unfold. But it's still happening.
What's the point of it?
They're a part of this because they're a part of this larger organism that's constantly causing different things the fact that there's tornado, I think it all goes back to the same thing of like a tornado happens and wipes out stuff. It causes things to suffer, doesn't it? Animals, people. So it's one of those things that just is occurring kind of autonomously, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. It's just kind of all happening. That it's not necessarily like this planned out thing, because the way that I understand it is like people are more important than everything else. That on this hierarchy of what's important to God, we're at the top. The animals are not at the same level as we are.
Mm.
And so if the earth is destroying itself, it's constantly like volcanoes are erupting, causing mass destruction, and then there's new life that happens. Like there's this constant cycle of life. The cycle of life is very real. And
I believe in the cycle of life, and I understand why those things happen in my own understanding of it, but I can't wrap my head around a God who is all perfect and all powerful and loving, creating those things. That's why I believe that there is no specific God in traditional sense.
I also, to bounce off of you, like, okay, so why are we sitting here in a nice climate controlled area and we have food and water and shelter and love, and there are people out there who are in other parts of the world who are suffering immensely, who have never had shelter, who have no food, who are starving of disease, and and we're living at the same time while we're here recording a podcast under a roof. They're out on the other side of the planet suffering, dying, starving. Why? Like, why is God allowing them to do that? And also, my other question is, what happens to people who never even have the opportunity to learn about God and make the decision of like, yes, I will be religious, or no, I will not be religious, and they die? Do they go to hell too? Even though it wasn't their fault, no one ever introduced them to God or gave them an option to try and believe in it or not believe in it. Like, why are we allowed to live such different experiences under the same God at the same time?
That's always the main point that has gotten me when it comes to religion, that I've never been able to believe it, because that doesn't make any sense to me, and I just don't. It doesn't make sense. And that's what I brought up to you when we were younger too, is like children in other parts of the world who have not been introduced to the Christian version of God, they just go to hell and they're eternally tortured? This makes no sense.
I think what's interesting too is when you think about, I think a lot of people can agree that, again, suffering makes our lives meaningful and it teaches us stuff. And I think a lot of people can get kind of on board with the idea of redemptive suffering and things like that. The question is, why does God, why can't we just have suffering that's like, a partner cheating on you, or, your house getting broken into, or something, on that level of suffering? Why does it have to be, why does there exist things like genocide or the horrors of war? Like, why do people have to, what argument can you make that they have to suffer that hard, like that intensely, that face that agonizing suffering, when, ideally you would want people to, face the quote unquote like normal suffering. Not ideal is the right word, but you get what I'm saying.
Why would a God
lower
create
level
those things?
Suffering than what we know that exists in the world, just the evil that exists in the world.
Well, this whole question, this whole problem of evil has led me to believe that it's far more complex than what the Bible possibly explains. Because I mean, to answer your question about what about those that never have the opportunity to hear about God or the Bible or Jesus, if they die, where do they go? And according to Scripture, everyone will have an opportunity to be presented with the evidence for God and choose to whether or not they believe in it.
So they believe they go to like a limbo if they haven't had the opportunity.
Sort of, yeah. Like there's a couple different ways to interpret the Scripture, but one is, I believe, those that potentially grow up in it, because like that wouldn't be fair, right? It wouldn't be fair for those who never heard the Bible or the story of Jesus or anything, and never had the opportunity to believe, to just be like, live their life, and then all of a sudden they die and they just go straight to hell, and they're like, whoa, where am I, and why this happened to me?
I've never heard this explanation of they get filled in after they die, and then they get to make a choice.
So there's
that they would have like a leg up on everyone else.
Right. Well, and that's the other problem is people bring up, well, what if we just don't spread the word of God and everybody just doesn't know about God, and therefore we're all given the opportunity? Because it comes back to the last time Jesus was here on the earth. That's when, we've got all of the New Testament of the Bible. That's where we've got all of his apostles talking about what they learned from Jesus and all these different things and how to live your life. And so the Bible also speaks about the second coming of Christ, which, we're getting into the rapture and, getting pretty deep into it. But the idea is that Jesus is going to make a return to this earth, and he's going to show everybody that he's real, and he's coming back to get those that believe in him, to bring them to heaven with him. And then that will be another opportunity for those that don't believe to believe. And I've always thought, I'm like, if that happens, then I will probably be the first one to be like, I believe 100%. If a rapture happens and all of a sudden a bunch of people disappear. Right. Well, that's the thing. But according to, there will still be people that reject the idea of God and the idea of the rapture.
Why would they?
And that's the thing is, so then Jesus will come back a third time, basically like at the end of days, because shit gets real after the rapture.
One more chance.
There's one more chance. But that's at that point is when all those people that died, who never knew Jesus and never had ever even heard of him before, get the opportunity to choose whether or not they believe with him. And according to Scripture, I believe it says God will resurrect them to their physical form and allow them to make that decision. That's what it says. But that's getting really, really deep into it. But that there's a lot of flaws with that too. There's explanations for everything, but a lot of it doesn't seem very plausible. You're like,
and there's still holes you can poke.
Totally. And that's the difficult thing that I have with people that are like, I only follow what the Bible says and I live my life by the Bible. Well, the Bible's got a lot of holes in it and a lot of things that are very iffy.
Which, to clarify, obviously, if you are whatever religion you are, we accept your belief and your right to believe.
Doesn't change what I think about you. No. Everybody's entitled to believe. I mean, I could believe
and you could be right. We could be wrong.
I'm a star seed from some planet, and I'm here to seed my DNA.
Yeah, that's your right as a human to
so
experience
it's like
what you want.
Everybody's allowed to experience what they want. I'm just saying, based on my understanding of the Bible and what I've read, I feel that there's, and I have asked pastors about this stuff before, and it literally comes down to, you just have to have faith in God. Your faith has to be strong enough in order to deal with these thoughts and these doubts that you have in your mind.
So since we're talking about the freedom to believe what we want at the end of the day, let's get into free will here and wrap up with that.
Yeah. The free will defense is actually kind of a response to the logical problem of evil. And the response would be, well, God created us to have free will and he's still maximally good, because giving us free will was the maximally good option. He thought it was maximally better to have us have freedom than for us to not have freedom. So I guess I'd ask, like, what do you guys think of that? Do you think that that's a convincing kind of solution to the problem that, well, God gave us free will because it was the maximally good option, or is that not convincing? And that's why evil exists, is because he gave us free will.
I think if you're looking at it from the perspective we have been, I think free will is the reason why we have evil. But from my own personal point of view, I don't think I don't think it's even that simple of like, because we have free will, there's evil. I think it goes all the way to the very fabric of everything. Talking about the universe, and you look at the energy that is in the universe. I think, if you're one of those people who believes in the universe and believes in this cosmic body of energy, and you look at energy itself, it's full of positive and negative electrons, and there's a balance, and you could even look at it like Star Wars in essence. So there's, the dark side and the light side. I think, because if you don't have one or the other, how does the other exist? Right. And you look at yin and yang and things like that. And you look at a lot of cultures and the way that they view things, and almost in every single one, there's always light with the dark. And I don't think you can have one without the other. I think evil has to exist for us to know what is good. Yes. And it doesn't necessarily just come down to free will that we get to choose whether or not we are good or we're evil, but this just inherently exists. It's just part of the fabric of the universe, is positive and negative. And we're made up of atoms of both types of energy. And so I think it's just kind of the way that the whole thing's designed. I don't think it necessarily has to deal with free will per se. That's where it starts. I think that's part of our experience is free will, and the fact that we have the ability to do whatever we want, and we can do nice things or we can do evil things.
And you believe this is a universal law.
Right.
Yes, I agree. And that means that there has to be evil beings out there as well.
Right.
Beyond our planet.
Do you think that would potentially make God not omnibenevolent and all-loving, though?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think so.
If there is a God, I don't think that they're necessarily, they have multiple motivations behind it, because clearly that whatever that entity is had to have created evil and had to have come up with the idea of things are born and things die. Yeah. Because if you look at the universe, galaxies, stars are born and they die. Cosmic entities, the largest things in the entire expanse of space, both live and they die. Mm-hmm. So I think because it extends that far, I think that's on purpose and by design.
I do too. And that's why I do believe in a higher power, higher creator, however you want to look at it. And I believe that we are designed as humans to experience everything, good, bad, in between. And that's why traditional religious text doesn't resonate with me, because it contradicts itself, that it says,
right,
God is all these things, yet it doesn't make sense with how reality actually shakes out.
Well, it's a lot easier to believe in this when you go back thousands of years ago, when we didn't necessarily know what we know now, and we didn't necessarily know what the space around our planet looks like, and what, the fact that we've been able to get glimpses deep into the universe. I think astronomy and just space in general for me really opened my eyes to just how big everything is and how small we are and how insignificant. Because the Bible really talks up this idea that you are this significant being, right? You're crucial to the existence of this planet and to everything around you. But then when you actually remove that and you take a step back and look at things from a larger perspective and you zoom out a little bit, you start realizing like we are tiny.
Yep.
We are specks in the grand expanse of the universe. We are in a tiny solar system in a smaller galaxy, and there's millions and millions of galaxies. And that's where it really started breaking down for me, is because when you start, and this is why a lot of Christians do not believe in the idea of aliens. They don't believe in the idea of extraterrestrials, because that creates a whole other problem there. Because then it's like, well, as far as what the Bible says, Bible never mentioned extraterrestrials or aliens, or the fact that Jesus also went to this planet and that planet, but we know that there's other planets out there. We know that for a fact. We've literally got pictures of them. We're able to study them. So it's like, that's where the Bible really breaks down for me, is that it's only written for this planet and for the people on this planet. But our universe is so much bigger than that. So what about all these other places that God created?
Well, like Kenneth Copeland, you got to go out and preach to the aliens too. Convert them all.
You try. But
that was Creflo Dollar. That's
was it Creflo?
If you thought it was bad, I'm asking. Yeah, if you thought it was bad, I'm asking for a plane. Just wait till I.
Oh right, it was Creflo. Now I remember.
Bring a Jesus space shuttle to Mars.
Okay.
I need money for that.
But when you look at the argument of free will, you could look at it. Why did God give us free will? Is it for him to like kind of watch everything unfold? It is kind of this idea of the simulation theory. When you really think about it, it's like God is running this computer simulation on his computer, and we're all a part of it. And he's kind of set these rules in place, and there's, you have the option to be good or bad. And he's sitting back kind of just watching everything unfold.
Play out.
Because again, it's like if God is all knowing, all merciful, powerful, why doesn't he intervene more? Why doesn't he stop unfair things from happening to good people or bad things happening to good people? I was like, my biggest question is, why do bad things happen to good people? Some of the best people on this planet experience the absolute worst situations and tragedies. And you're like, why?
There's also the question of, if God is both omnibenevolent and omnipotent, doesn't he have the power to create a maximally good universe where we only freely choose to do good things? Is that possible? A lot of people have different thoughts about that, but I'm wondering.
But it wouldn't be fun for him. It'd be entertaining.
But he would ultimately get what he wants in that world. He would get everybody that worships him and loves him. Well, and that's the thing. And this is where my conclusion leads to. The Bible did a really decent job at trying to explain it all, but it missed the mark on a lot of different things. I think it can provide some foundational things, but ultimately we don't know, and no one knows. No human that's ever walked this planet understands the complexity of God, understands how this
Although there's
shit
many
works.
people who think they've got it all figured out.
Nobody knows how it works. Nobody knows how it works. We're all just searching for the truth at the end of the day. We're all just digging. We're all just like dogs looking for a bone. We're all just like digging away, hoping to find the bone, and we're never going to get there.
Just in the yard walking around, enjoying the time I have.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is you can either just enjoy the ride, or you can spend your whole life trying to find something you will never find. And is that a life at all, to just or live it in fear of, well, what if this is true?
So do you think we have free will?
We obviously have free will.
Yeah, I agree.
No, there isn't a supernatural force that tells me to do something or not to do something, or stops me from doing something I shouldn't do.
Well, don't most religious people believe
that's true? I don't
that
necessarily
there's free
know.
will. Isn't that kind of?
Well, yeah, that's what the whole concept of the Bible is God gives you free will, and you can choose to believe in him or deny him.
Well, there's some sects that are more, into predestination. I think about Calvinism. God has already pre-picked, those that are going to heaven and those that are the damned.
Oh, really? I've never heard that. That's interesting.
That's real shitty.
Yeah. Well, but, if you don't, free will is, to put it quite simply, very tricky philosophically, especially when you bring God into it, because, can we choose something? If God is all powerful and omniscient and knows everything, he knows what we're going to do next. We can't, if he's all powerful, we can't really be able to do something that he doesn't know about.
Right.
Would we be able, to choose differently? Like, I could hit the table with my hand or not. God already knows what I'm going to do. I hit it. Could I have possibly chosen not
how
to?
free is that?
Exactly.
How free is your actual will?
I think about that all the time.
Or is your will not free at all, but it's an illusion that
I could just do this crazy move, but maybe it was planned.
But maybe God pulled Kendall's string.
Yeah,
hand.
Exactly.
She's about to do this.
Well, don't you believe also in the idea that everything happens? I'm talking to you, Kendall, that everything happens for a reason and that there is a purpose to everything that happens?
I do.
So then doesn't that basically take away the idea of free will? If there was like this bad thing happened because this other door was going to open up. Well, that was always going to happen. That door was always supposed to open up, and therefore, in order for that to happen, this bad thing needed to take place. So doesn't that kind of go against the idea of free will if your life to some degree is already like planned out?
I see what you mean.
Free will would be the freedom to choose differently.
I mean, I'm not like completely solidified in the idea that everything happens for a reason. I tend to think that way.
Sure.
But that is a very good point. Damn, I'm going to be thinking about this all night.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm curious your final answers on this. Final thoughts before we wrap up here.
About free will?
Yeah, do you believe everything happens for a reason, or do you believe in free will? Like, I guess it's kind of one or the other.
I hate that question because I do believe that there's a reason why things happen. And maybe I just believe that because it makes me more comfortable.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I guess if I really believe that wholeheartedly, then I don't believe in free will, but I do. So
Right.
to an extent. So yeah, I don't feel comfortable making an exact decision on that. And that's my right.
And I feel very comfortable not answering things.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable being like, I don't really know. And I could see the argument for both sides rather than being so gung-ho on one side versus another. Like that gives me more anxiety because what if I'm wrong? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's more comforting to know like, I don't know. Either could be true. And I see great points for either of them, but I also see flaws for both, you know?
And that's kind of where we're lucky compared to Julia and Josh is that we hadn't had any thoughts or fears implanted into us when we were young, and we were able to think freely right from birth and make our own decisions, and we got comfortable with that versus being told this is the way, and then if you're not following that, then it's bad, it's wrong. And I really feel for people out there who are still struggling with this.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Well, it allows you to stay open.
Mm-hmm.
And I think an open mind is a good thing in most situations, in most scenarios of life, because it's so easy to fall down the wrong path, even if you think it's the right one. But if you remain open, you're able to consider all paths without bias and without past influences coming into play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're all striving for, is to find this balance and openness to where we feel comfortable while still remaining open to all possibilities. Because I think that's the reason why many of us fall down one of these paths, is because it gives us a sense of peace, knowing that we're on a path and not floating above multiple paths.
Yeah.
In a larger sense, being open can give you more peace than potentially being on one path would.
Yeah.
If you can get to that
Even
point.
if the other path is you grow up with a parent who doesn't believe in any religion and they tell you that none of it's real and kind of instill that belief. I'm very grateful that my parents were totally like, could be, could not. What do you think? Explore, live, life freely.
But ultimately, it's every single one of our duties in life to ponder on these things. I think it's good to ponder about these things.
I do too. I think that's part of the experience,
ask
right?
these questions, because we're all on this. At the end of the day, we're all going to go out alone. We're all going to, we're all on our own journey, and, we have people that join us for the journey, but ultimately it is our journey. Mm-hmm. And the only ones that can control our journey are you and you alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think everybody should think about these things and think about, and if you're religious, maybe think about, why am I religious? Why do I believe the things that I do? And
you might have answers for those things.
Right. But I think even if you are religious, doesn't necessarily mean that you should close yourself off from everything else and what other people's perspectives are.
And
because
oh, sorry to cut you off. I didn't know you were going to say, because
go ahead. No,
I was just going to say, we really appreciate all of you out there. I think it's awesome if you are religious and you chose to listen to this episode, even though it might be uncomfortable, and like challenge yourself and think.
Yeah.
I think that shows a lot, even if you, come out with the same conclusions.
I think it's really, really interesting too, because, for me, again, I grew up Catholic, and I'm really grateful for the experience that I had. And I think, me and Josh probably had different experiences. I'm not going to say mine was 100% positive, but I'd say overall it was positive.
That's good.
And I had really, transformative spiritual experiences, during that time. And in high school, especially, I had some intensely, spiritual experiences while I was kind of still affiliated with the church. But I think philosophy, I started studying philosophy in school really at a time when I was kind of, I guess, struggling with my faith and, God and whether or not God existed and everything. And it's actually kind of interesting. I think a lot of people thought I was going to go off to college and study philosophy and be like, God's not real, a hardline atheist. And actually, it's kind of what almost saved my faith in a way. I think that I became more spiritual and more like theistic in my beliefs, kind of studying stuff. So I think that's really the beauty of philosophy, is truly keeping yourself open to really everything. Because I was kind of going in almost afraid that I was just going to lose my faith completely. And it was,
you wouldn't believe in anything.
Yeah, I was shocked at how it was really the opposite. And
that's a really great point.
Yeah,
I love that message, because I think that message is true. I know it's true for me that you assume that if you start questioning things that you're automatically going to become a non-believer and end up an atheist. I mean, from my perspective growing up and from what I was told, being an atheist is like the worst thing you could possibly do, because you're rejecting God completely. But I think what you find is that quite the opposite happens. I think it's good to explore your spirituality in all senses and open yourself to other things. And ultimately, whatever you truly believe in is where you're going to end up. And so even if you are a Christian and you're raised this way, I think looking, exposing yourself to other things and allowing yourself to learn different perspectives can be healthy for your faith. And testing your faith is something that is healthy, because if you just stay in one place your entire life and you never have these other experiences, then I don't know that I feel that you're doing yourself a disservice by not doing those things, because ultimately you only know what you know. And if you never go beyond your little world, then how do you know if your little world is the right way? I don't know.
No, I see what you're saying.
I'm thinking from my own personal family members and stuff that have lived this way, and I often think about this to myself of, man, I wonder if they would, maybe they would end up being a Christian in the end, even if they did go and expose themselves.
Yeah.
Maybe it would strengthen their faith in God, and if it does, that's great. I mean, that's ultimately what we're all here to do, is to figure out, why we're here, what's our purpose.
That's right. The ultimate question.
Where do we go when it's all over?
Well, we want to hear from all of you, so leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts. And again, thank you for listening to this very different style episode of Mile Higher. We really enjoy having these open discussions, and it was so nice to have Julia here. Isn't she beautiful, smart, wonderful? We love her.
Smart, amazing.
We're so lucky to have you on our team.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad I got to chat with you guys today. And
yeah, this was fun.
Say hi to
yes, everyone say hi to Julia.
But yeah, also let us know if you want to see future episodes like this, or if there's other topics or philosophical questions, or just philosophy in general that you'd love us to see and see us debate and conversate about. Because I really enjoy this. I love diving deep within ourselves. So with that being said, we'll wrap up today's episode there, and we'll see you next week. Until then, keep taking your mind
a mile higher.